in the age of wonder. Another world, another time. His land was green and good.
So you've got a cool role-playing game, some fan material or something you've done, but it's sellable. Yeah, maybe with a bit of tweaking or whatever. How do you sell it? Where do you sell it? Is it worth setting up your own online store? I recently did that, post-mort.com. My reason for doing so was a kind of chain of events that have shown how much more censorious a lot of the third-party online sales points, like One Bookshelf, have become. And also because losing a quarter to a third of the cover price to the site seemed like a bit much to me, and I wanted to keep more of that money. So having just been through this process and having a long storied history with these various online sales points and running afoul of various problems with them, I thought I'd offer this. I am planning to do a paid for video series that will go into these kinds of topics in a lot more depth, but lots of people are kind of clamouring for information on this, and there's an increasing hunger for an alternative to drive-through RPG, so it seemed to make sense to cover this. The reason there's this call, this appeal for new sites, for in particular a new third-party sales site, is because of this increasing censoriousness. All it takes is 5 minutes of a howling online mob and an extremely reactive company like Drive-Thru or whoever will knee-jerk and remove a product, tighten up their restriction policies, or memory hole a creator. Drive-Thru's not as bad as some of the others, but it's still pretty bad. Now, if you're a producer, then you know that margins on game production are already pretty razor thin. And that this kind of thing can just wipe you out. And if you're supplementing a disability income, or low-level employment, or if you're underemployed or whatever, this can have a major impact on you. Just because you've done some edgy content or some slightly adult content, you can suddenly find yourself to be the target of genuine harassment or smears or whatever else. And there's a lot of people in the gaming space, because it's an artistic and literary space, who are very much against censorship. So that's why there's this hunger and need for a new alternative. Or the other way to look at it is an opportunity to create your own sales points. Now, Drive-Thru isn't the only site there is. There's E23, there's Paizo, but Drive-Thru RPG / RPG Now, everything that falls under the One Bookshelf umbrella, they're like the behemoth in this niche. If you're not on there, you may as well not be anywhere. That's where you're going to get the majority of your money in sales. Now, this causes a problem for any upstart company, and it also causes a problem for you as an independent company driving traffic to your site for sales instead of them. So you can keep an extra quarter to a third of your cover price, which is worthwhile. But it's not worthwhile if you can't drive that purchasing traffic to your site, and therein lies the problem. Now, if all you want to do is to set up your own sales point for your own products, it's not too difficult. You can go to something like Shopify, or there's plenty of other services, and you can essentially get an off-the-shelf website and just plug your art and your product into that, and away you go. Essentially, that's what I did. I used to work in web design. This was a long time ago when CSS was only really just being taken up. So my skills are now woefully inadequate. But if I manage to set up a site using this process, then you can. You'll want to register a domain and make sure it all works across with that. You'll need some graphics, odds are you've probably already got some, and then you'll need to spend some time uploading and filling out the information for your products. But it's worth it. The only real sticking point comes with terms of service and payment processes. Now, most shop sites have some kind of terms of service thing which you may run afoul of in the gaming space. Things about depicting gore or sexuality, things like that. It's a big grey area when it comes to games though, because their primary purpose is not pornographic. So provided you're not selling porn, you're generally going to be okay, or at least it seems to be somewhat on your side. The problem is that you cannot show or directly link to anything pornographic or that could be interpreted as pornographic on the site. So, say you made adult comics, for example, and you uploaded one to this site. The thumbnail could not show anything adult, and you could not directly link off, say it was a webcomic that you were putting into a collection, you couldn't link directly off there to your adult webcomic, which would be obviously pornographic or whatever. But you can sell, just as long as you don't show. The most obvious, most widespread example of this is sex toys. Most of these sites will allow you to sell sex toys, but not with showing the toy, or how it might be used, or a couple in an adult situation, and so on. You just have to have, I don't know, an image of a happy smiling couple and then a description, but you can't show it with most of these sites. That's mostly the payment processors, but it's also the sites themselves, so you do have to keep that in mind. Payment processors are an even bigger problem though, and something you will have to consider. Most payment processors block various things that they consider to be immoral or whatever else. This is generally pornography, but it can also include gore and various other issues that people in the gaming space may well fall afoul of. They're also extremely vulnerable to attack from mobs. They're very reactive in the same way that sites like DriveThruRPG are. Finding a payment processor that's willing to deal with explicitly adult or edgy material is difficult again. In the UK, for example, there is only one bank that has merchant accounts, which you may need to set up, that allows you to deal with adult merchandise, and that's Barclays, and they're remarkably unresponsive unless you're a fairly large business. That said, something like PayPal, which you're going to have set up anyway to get any real traction for online sales, something like PayPal is very much in this grey area. So they will allow you to sell these things up to a point, so long as it's not explicitly pornography. So if you do something that's adult, but is primarily a game, you should be okay, because you fall into that grey area. People outside the UK, places like America, have a few more choices, but you can never be entirely certain with payment processors that they're not going to pull the rug out from under you. Fortunately, most of these plug-and-play websites you can choose from various different payment processors, so you may just have to swap bank and reset everything up. By and large, I think gaming companies are pretty small and may well fly under the radar so far as a lot of these services are concerned, but there's also no consistency in their enforcement, so it's just something to be aware of. Of course, once you have your own site, you have a whole new set of challenges. You need to drive traffic to it, because while you're not going to be losing that same percentage, you are going to be losing a couple of % here and there on credit card transactions and so on, and the hosting for the site, which may be $30 a month to start with, rising as you get more traffic. Getting people to your site is going to be difficult though. You can put it in your forum signatures, you can put it on your social media, you can link it in all your products, but getting people to that site is going to be tricky and is going to take time. So even if you've got reasonable sales, it may take a while before you build up enough traction for it to actually start paying for itself and paying off. But you can do all those things. You can advertise it everywhere. Just don't be a prick about it. Don't shill every minute of every day. Otherwise you're just going to put people off, not turn them on to your product. Now, one advantage that having your own site has over these third-party sites like RPG Now and DriveThru is that you can link to your sales points elsewhere. DriveThru don't allow this. They block any non-internal links for the most part. So you can't drive people from DriveThru to, say, lulu.com where you sell your hard copies, or to the Game Crafter for your hard copies of board games or card games or whatever. They want to keep you in that site to get more sales there. on your own site, you can link off to anywhere you want, even these third-party sites, and use that to drive sales of these things. So on your page for one of your products that you're selling the electronic download for, you can perfectly easily link off to Lulu, to the Game Crafter, and drive people to buy your hard copy products, and it's no skin off your nose because you're getting more sales. So that's one advantage. You can also host blogs and so on a lot of these sites as well. You can offer physical products. If you want to sell some second-hand stuff, there's no reason you can't throw it up onto your shop. No reason at all. And beside the base fee, there are often subscription fees for apps on these stores. So if you want to do pay what you want on a product, you may have to download an app to do so, but a lot of them are free. A lot of them help drive sales, like people who bought this also bought that is a free app on Shopify, for example. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity there for your own site. It's just going to take hard work and time to get enough people to purchase there instead of on these third-party sites. Now, if you're looking to set up a genuine alternative to drive-through, you've got a lot more things in your way. You need to have a public-facing thing where people who have store IDs on there can upload their material, and it needs to be easy and it needs to work. That's a challenge, so you need genuine coders with genuine skill. You're going to need to host more of the back end and so on yourself. Yeah, there's a lot of issues in the way of doing it, and payment processing issues that you need to stay in line with, and all the rest of it. So if someone wanted to set up a less censorious free speech alternative to drive-through, they would have a lot of things in their way. Plus, you've got to have a unique selling point, and being edgy and free speech in and of itself isn't enough, so you probably need to undercut them on the amount that you were taking from sales on that site, maybe to 25% instead of a third, so a quarter instead of a third. That might be enough to get people interested in uploading to your site, but people will take the path of least resistance, so they will prefer to stay where they are and won't want to put the effort in to move somewhere else. So there's a lot more technical barriers, there's the same payment processing barriers, and you're likely to end up being brigaded at some point as well if you do set up an independent shop. There have been attempts to do this before. Your Games Now was one. Their upload interface was a bit tricksy and not particularly user-friendly or usable. Neither was the site as a whole. It just lacked the polish that these other sites had, and that failed, unfortunately, despite paying out more to creators, which gave creators a reason to drive people to that site. So it's been tried and it's failed. It's more difficult now with drive-through having such enormous dominance. So you've got an uphill struggle if you're doing that. There have been rumblings now and again of people going to do this. Mark Kern raised it at one point. Various other people have. Nothing's come of it. Probably because it's just difficult and expensive, and role-playing games are such a niche product and such a niche market. So I think it's unlikely. As to myself, I am willing to take on a small number of other publishers and so on into my site, but because I have to upload everything individually and personally, I can't throw my doors open to anyone and everyone to provide an alternative to drive-through. Just people who are thematically appropriate or who have run into trouble with online harassment mobs and censorship. But I just don't have the time to do that for everybody. Please leave questions in the comments. I will do my best to answer however I can. I think I've sketched out the big issues. If you do want to set up your own site, I think it is worth doing, but it's worth doing after you've got a certain amount of product, a reasonable amount of a back catalogue to do so, and enough of an audience on your social media, your blogs, whatever other presence you've got that you can drive in that direction. If you can put all that together, I think it's worth it. Sang.
Women are just wrong, mate. Well, give me just one more drink. I need it to tolerate your industry. I don't want it, I don't need it, but I love it, 'cause it's the new black. You can make
happen. I can get you anything you want. You just have to talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. I'm your priest. I'm your shrink. I'm your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man. The Santa Claus of the subconscious. You say it. You even think it. You can have it.